Welcome to another edition of Community Conversations. I'm Laura Manion, your host. In my community affairs role at Villanova, I've met many exceptional people doing extraordinary work, from university professors and leaders of service organizations to law enforcement officials and township commissioners. The goal of this program is to provide you, the viewers, a monthly glimpse of the people making headlines at Villanova and across the township. Today, I'll introduce you to someone that plays an instrumental role in helping make the township and Villanova University the special place that they are. Sydney Scheiner serves as the coordinator for conduct and community engagement in the Dean of Students office at Villanova University. She works as a conduct officer within the university's student conduct system and supports students living off campus in the local community. Originally from New Jersey, Sydney earned her bachelor's degree in communication from the University of Delaware in 2016 and her master's in college student personnel from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville in 2018. Sydney focuses on educating students on both relevant laws and university policies that apply to all students, risk reduction, and social gatherings as they pertain to health and safety related responsibilities, as well as being a positively contributing member of the Villanova community. Thank you, Sydney, for joining us today.
Of course.
So I know I gave a little bit about your bio, but could you expand further on your background in higher education?
Sure. So I originally attended the University of Delaware for my undergraduate degree. And like you mentioned in my bio, I went to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, for my master's degree, which is in college student personnel, higher education administration, really all of that you may hear in different kinds of programs. And it really all means the same thing. And it's really a degree in supporting college students and really understanding just how administratively institutions of higher education operate from a really holistic standpoint. So I've been able to experience different types of schools, large public institutions, and how they're a little bit different from maybe small private. So working at Villanova, where I've been for the past almost 3 years now, has been a really great experience to be working at a college that's a little bit smaller, and we can really focus on those personal interactions with students, with community members, because it's just smaller and we really have the ability to do that. So I like that I've experienced different kinds of institutions, but I've really enjoyed working at Villanova for what it is and what we have the ability to do.
That's great. So tell me a little bit more what a coordinator for conduct and community engagement in the Dean of Students office does on a day-to-day basis. And I know the answer is going to be every day is different.
You nailed it. And I used to always get frustrated with people who that would be the answer to their job when they worked in higher education. And now I fully get it myself. So every day is different, but I would say the main themes of what I do as the coordinator for conduct and community engagement. The Dean of Students office at Villanova is the office that oversees the code of student conduct and the process that goes along with that. So I am one of the people at the university who is directly responding when we have different issues that come up with either certain students or different situations that happen. And if there's a violation of the code of student conduct, or I should say if there might be, essentially that I am one of the people at the university who that student might meet with to talk about the situation. We do a little bit of just learning to understand different situations that happen, different students and their involvement. And then really what we ultimately though focus on is the education that comes from that. So I really love working within an educational conduct process because that's just it. We can really focus on what did we learn from this? And yes, accountability is a part of it. But how do we move forward as you're, in your 4 years here, building your habits and building, the person that you're going to become. And so that's really the conduct piece of my job. The community engagement piece, I'll tell you, I really stretch to mean a lot of different things. We'll talk a lot about how we work together in the local community, but I also use that as engagement on campus. So I do a lot of things outside of my role just in conduct, whether it's partnering with different student organizations, facilitating different conversations in the academic space as an adjunct faculty member, which I do, or working, with different student organizations, different student groups, facilitating trainings on bystander intervention, whatever it might be. I really do a ton, as we all do in student life, I would say. So I really stretch that community engagement to mean a lot of different things so that students get to know me outside of just my conduct role.
Yeah, that sounds all encompassing. And also how I answer what I do at Villanova as well. And so as the Assistant Director of Government and Community Relations at Villanova, you and I, we overlap a lot. Our offices work on a lot of different initiatives, a lot of different proactive, positive outreach to our students. We work hand in hand with the local townships and their staff, their police departments, and the local commissioners. So let's dive into really how we work together. Let's talk about off-campus efforts at Villanova, which is a relatively new focus since they brought us on for the university. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So Laura and I, yes, we work together a lot. And I would say how we really overlap really does come with that off-campus piece. And that is really the intersection for us. How we view that is our offices, community relations and government relations, and then the Dean of Students and student life. Where we overlap are really our students out in the community and how our students impact the community by being a part of it. A lot of times that's in really positive contributing ways, and other times there are issues, and we kind of both bring different perspectives. And so you are right that at this point in time, we don't have designated staff members working exclusively in an office of off-campus living. And I think that's somewhere for the university to grow, and they're clearly, employing us to
committed to it.
Start that. So I think we've been able to do some really good work in addressing that population of people. And so that being our students who live out in the community, because we do live in a really residential area, and we know that we're unique in that our students, unlike maybe some other universities, are living next door to families. And how does that impact, their behavior and how it's perceived and how it impacts those around you, because it may not be the same as if you were living in when you were living on campus and everyone around you was your age, you're on your schedule for the most part. So we really work together in the proactive sense to address our students in the community and how we really want that to be a positive part of the community and less about it being any sort of issue.
Sure, because it's really their first time, being adults on their own without their parents, without an RA or, anyone, university staff constantly being on campus with them. And that's a huge adjustment for many of those students. So let's talk a little bit about the importance of our relationships with Laura Manion and Radnor Township, as well as their police departments. What is community harmony, and how has that sort of evolved over the last 3 years since we've both been brought on board?
So I would say community harmony is really a build off of this idea of, community at Villanova University. And when I started here, I would say that was one of the first things I learned about, our campus, is that we have this really big focus on being a community, and what does that actually mean? And so I think what community harmony really serves to communicate is that, the university, the students, your office, Lower Marion Police, local police departments, we are all working toward the same thing, and that is to be a thriving community for all people. And that is something, again, that we are working toward. And I think that over the last several years, we've made some really great strides in that. So community harmony, we go door to door to our students who live out in the community twice a year and literally just remind them that you are a part of community. If there are any issues that are ongoing, we use that as an opportunity to address it directly. So for example, I know that when we were knocking door to door this semester, we said, hey, we're getting started for a new semester. We made it through the fall. That doesn't mean necessarily that we're going to make it through the spring. So let's, remember to be on our game when it comes to gatherings and being safe. So we use that as, literally face to face, 6 feet apart, of course, now, with masks on, doing all of that to really remind them firsthand that it's, we're on the same team, and that there's only going to be, it's only a thriving community if we all are. And that includes, being mindful of our neighbors. And so we do have a really good working relationship with our partners in the community. And that's why we're able to do our jobs, I think, as well as we are.
And is that a common practice at most universities for staff to accompany police members and knock on off-campus residencies?
In my experience, it doesn't happen everywhere. And again, it just depends, because sometimes at your larger state schools, we just don't have the access that we do here, and we don't have the ability, because there are so many people at play, that it's a little bit more structured, it's a little bit more formal. It's not always the easiest to foster the connections that we're able to. So I'm not saying it's impossible there, but we can really leverage being a smaller community. So like Laura, I know you've worked really hard to, have personal relationships with a lot of the people that we work with. So it's so easy for us to, call them on the phone or send them a quick email. We know we're going to get a response because we've spent the last few years really developing those relationships. So I think that what we have at Villanova is unique. What I will say is not uncommon and a lot of people don't realize this, it's not uncommon in college, I'll say towns with colleges in them, to have a working relationship with local police, in the sense that we are able to then follow up on things that happen off campus. A lot of students don't realize that just because you're beyond the physical bounds of campus, it doesn't mean that you're suddenly not a Villanova student. So I think that's important for the students and for community members to know, is that just because something happens off campus, we know that doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't impact campus. So we're still following up on those things.
Sure. So can you just give us a little bit of an overview of how that follow-up process works?
Sure. So we do receive information from local police departments in the form of police reports. So if it involves a Villanova student, which a lot of times they will, ask the person while something is happening, if they're a Villanova student, and if they are, essentially we get forwarded that report from Lower Marion or whatever township it's coming from. And essentially then at that point, it really works similarly to how we would receive a report from an RA on campus or from our own Department of Public Safety. At that point, we are following up with the student to say, we've received this information. There might be a violation of the Code of Student Conduct. I'm scheduling this meeting with you for you to come talk about it. The student gets the opportunity to share their perspective. So we ideally like to make decisions with the student's involvement, not without their involvement. So they get to share their perspective, their own point of view. And if I feel like I need to look more into something, I will. And so that's when those relationships really come into play, because I get to then follow up with, for example, Lower Marion Police and say, hey, can you confirm for me that this is, what happened here? What's your perspective? And really be able to then bring that back to the student. Because we are incredibly transparent with the students, and we really pride ourselves on that. We're not here to hide anything. We're here to have a very transparent conversation. And so because we have the relationships we do, we can follow up directly when the police are contacted or when a neighbor reports something.
That's great. And if you do have a neighbor concern, that isn't a police report that's been generated, how do you handle something like that?
So we will say that, even though we work within the disciplinary system, we are not only meeting with students to issue disciplinary outcomes, if that makes sense. So what we do still have the ability to do is nothing's ever going to stop us from following up with a student to just have a conversation. So I've met with many students over my time here where maybe we don't have a full picture, or we just received a report from a neighbor about something they think happened. Sometimes it's very detailed. And then we can, we'll ask the students about that. Sometimes it's not so detailed, but it will mention an address, for example. If we're able to, in working with the information we have, we're going to make every effort to follow up. And at that point, we have a conversation with the students, and we may, issue an outcome if there's a clear Code of Student Conduct violation. In the event that there's not, we still will have that conversation, because it's still worth it to say, hey, something happened to the point where someone was, made a complaint, or someone felt the need to reach out. Like that in and of itself is a learning opportunity to say, hey, what can I be doing better? So I think what I like about our approach is that we're not just here to issue disciplinary outcomes or not. We're actually here to foster good relationships and have conversations regardless of what the outcome is or isn't. We take that opportunity for an educational conversation. So nothing's ever going to stop us from following up with students and at the minimum having a conversation with them.
That's great. And do you guys have relationships with local landlords or large apartment complexes in the area that you sort of have communication with them, as well as just another part of working with the community and its stakeholders?
Definitely. So I think something, you and I have really focused on is we definitely know the complexes off campus where a lot of our students live. So we are not shy about reaching out to those complexes and saying, hey, we know a lot of our students live there. what can we be doing to support you? And it's definitely a balance, because on one hand, it's off campus, and ultimately some of these complexes or properties, whatever they might be, they are, like you said, adults for the first time stepping out, and they do have a lease and they do have renters' rights. And so they, on one hand, they're dipping into that aspect of kind of like adulthood. On the other hand, they're still a Villanova student, and we know that we have a shared responsibility to, to address any issues that come up, or to educate, on how to be, again, a good neighbor. So I feel like we do a really good job of balancing those. And so we do reach out to, different complexes that exist off campus, in Lower Marion and in Radnor, where we know a lot of our students live. And we speak with the property managers, we speak with the landlords. We're very transparent about any ongoing issues. We have standing weekly meetings with some of them. And so again, we're here to be very transparent about what can we do to support in what is feasible for us, and offering that support. So we are very much, I would say, over the last few years have way opened up lines of communication with some of those apartment complex and some of the houses that we know a lot of our students tend to live in from year to year.
Mm-hmm. So with all that talk about off-campus students, do you interact with students living on campus? Do you provide resources to them? Do you have those meetings as well as you were describing for our off-campus students?
Definitely. So I definitely have a special focus on our off-campus population, but a majority of our students do live on campus. So I definitely also, address different issues or to have different follow-up meetings with students who live on campus as well. And here's where the lines are really blurred, is because we know that our students on campus will go and socialize off campus, especially, given the current circumstances now. We are being very, mindful of that. And of course, things are different now, and we're, discouraging unnecessary travel and unnecessary gathering. But in, quote unquote, normal times, we know that there is a lot of exchange between our students on campus and our students off campus. And so I end up talking about, life off campus, even sometimes with students who I meet who live in an on-campus residence hall. So we're still following up, because sometimes we'll have issues that, come up on campus, but at some point in the situation, they had been off campus. So we definitely, view it all as one. We don't as much silo each one, because we know that they're so intertwined. So I definitely, just as much work with on-campus students as I do off campus.
That's great. And what type of policies do we have on campus that may be different from off campus, or that would be applicable off campus as well, but very focused on our on campus students?
Sure. So I think something that's, again, important to note is that the Code of Student Conduct, which again promotes good decision-making, safe decision-making, healthy decision-making now, it applies to everyone. The reality of the situation is that we do have more oversight, more direct oversight of our students who live on campus, right? We have RAs who live in the halls. We have other, buildings of students who are holding each other accountable. We have public safety. And so there are things that, happen on campus that we're able to, first of all, have certain policies, because those are our buildings, and part of living on campus is signing on to that contract as well. So do you want me to speak specifically about health and safety policies right now, or just—
Sure, if you just want to give an overview of, we have an alcohol policy, Title IX, Know Your Noise, any of those that we've really, there's campaigns across campus for.
Sure. So again, if you look in the Code of Student Conduct, we have, again, policies and expectations of all kinds. And so a lot of them are state and federal laws. They're not totally different. And then some are really unique to on campus. So for example, on campus, we have an alcohol policy. And on campus, regardless of your age, whether you are under 21 or over, or I should say, if you're over 21, I should say, you're not permitted to have hard liquor on campus. So that's an example of a unique policy at Villanova, and where that really came from is that we know, we have data to support this, that our most serious alcohol incidents most of the time involve hard liquor. So we looked at that and we said, regardless of age, you're not permitted to have hard liquor on campus. And so that's been really, I would say, well received by the community. So, we have alcohol policies, noise policies, after we have quiet hours, we have what we call 24/7 courtesy hours. So that means you should never be wildly disruptive. But we do have, similarly to how a township might have a noise ordinance, we have that on campus as well. Like you said, Title IX policies that would cover sexual violence, sexual misconduct on campus, and all of that as well. So very extensive policies, and especially now, a lot of health and safety related policies to address COVID related concerns.
Yeah, so it's amazing that we've gotten this far in our conversation and haven't brought up COVID yet. But, over the last few weeks, Villanova has implemented some policies and mitigation measures to slow the spread. We have had a somewhat of a situation on campus with numbers being slightly higher than, anyone is hoping for. Can you talk a little bit about some of the strategies that were put in place by the university to address those concerns, to mitigate and stop the spread on campus?
Yeah, so we did, we came into the semester having a relatively successful, I would say, fall semester where we did not need to send everybody home. We made it through, again, relatively safely, I would say. I'm across the board, very happy with how the fall semester went. And so what we need to remember, obviously, we had to remember for the spring semesters that we had to do it all again. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we did see high numbers, unprecedented numbers than we had seen before. And in response to that, we did implement temporary restrictions. And so that we are currently in that 2-week time period. So beginning February 5th, and it'll go until 2 weeks after that. So it'll be this Friday. Mm-hmm. We implemented what we are calling slow the spread restrictions. And so a few examples of what that entails. So previously, under typical COVID guidelines, for example, on campus, you are allowed a certain amount of guests in your room, and that is actually double what your room occupancy is. So for example, in normal times, if you live in an apartment with 4 people, you're permitted to have 8 people in the room total. Now, under these current restrictions, you are only permitted to have 1 extra guest in the room. So no matter what your room size is, you're only allowed to have 1 extra person. What also is different is currently you are not permitted in any other residence hall that is not your own. So previously, on-campus students were allowed in any building. Right now, they're not. If you live in Stanford, you can only be in Stanford right now.
Understandable.
Also, what's happening is students who live on campus are not permitted to be off campus for any non-essential reason. So those essential reasons essentially include grocery shopping, pharmacy, if you maybe work a job that you need to go to, things like that. But students right now on campus should not be socializing off campus. And really the same is actually in reverse. So right now off-campus students are actually not permitted to be on campus unless they are attending class or using our facilities that are highly regulated, highly, have a lot of oversight. They can't be eating in the dining halls right now, just in the same way that our students on campus can't be going out to eat off campus. They need to order takeout. So those are just some mitigating factors, and it's looking really promising because you've probably seen our numbers are trending in the right direction.
Yes, definitely trending in the right direction. Hopefully that will continue, and we really slow and stop the spread on campus. So I know we only have a few more minutes, but the Caritas Commitment, let's talk a little bit about that, what that means, how that's applied on and off campus, and sort of how that's really taken a life of its own since COVID-19 started.
Sure. So the Caritas Commitment is really what we had students, staff, and faculty all sign, acknowledge back when they came onto campus in August and recommit to when they came onto for the spring semester. Really what the Caritas Commitment says very generally is that you are going to, regardless of whether you are on campus, off campus, basically in all of your interactions, you are going to put the community first, right? Because it's not only about your own health and your own safety, it's about the health and safety of everybody else. You're going to be wearing your masks when you're outside of your own room or household. You're going to be distancing whenever possible. You're going to be monitoring yourself for symptoms. You're going to be reporting to the health center if you are experiencing symptoms or have tested positive. All these different things. This is essentially the community-wide commitment to keep campus as safe as possible. We don't expect to be a bubble, but we can do what we can to keep campus as safe as possible. And what a separate, aspect of the Caritas Commitment is that it is an understanding that in certain cases, if this is violated, not only are you just violating the commitment that you've made, but you also might be violating the Code of Student Conduct. And so that is a lot of what, our office is seeing right now, because it's hard to kind of extract health and safety from anything these days.
Sure.
There's really few things that have zero impact on, COVID related concerns. So it does feel like everything, ultimately comes back to that. So that would be kind of just a very generic overview of the Caritas Commitment, but it's fully outlined on our website, along with, talks about what's included in the student handbook as well.
That's great. And I know we had really focused on making sure our off-campus students knew that it was the same commitment on campus and off campus, and really hammering that home this year of all their actions off campus need to reflect those on campus as well. All said, this has been a great conversation. I'm so happy you were able to join us today. Is there anything else that you would like our viewers to know before we sign off?
I think just, leaving with an understanding that we know that we are part of a community. We know that our students are out in the community, and what they do impacts you all and vice versa. So we are very focused on that. I assure you, Laura and I are working very hard to, address these things both proactively and reactively. So just know that we understand how impactful it is for us, our students, to be safe.
Yes, and how thankful we are to have such amazing community partners who are working on these initiatives, these events, and all the other things that we're doing. So I would really like to thank Sydney Scheiner for participating in today's show. We look forward to the next show as we introduce you to other individuals making news and positively impacting the communities around us. For more information on some of the great things happening at Villanova and opportunities to be involved, please visit www.villanova.edu/neighbors.